State of Scrims Season 3, Episode 1. Easy to count because we do have this new season going on here. So far, we have had the Frostbite tournament, but we haven't gotten into any official games this season. Excited to be back. And we do
Yeah,
want to go over some of the roster changes that we have seen. Get a look at the new teams. We've gotten to see some of them throughout Frostbite. Some had full rosters, some didn't. So we have varying degrees of knowledge on their gameplay. Do you have any thoughts that you want to share before we really get into it?
no, not really. I think all the teams are very close in skill this season. A lot of interesting player swaps around, and like I think there's a couple interesting role swaps as well. Well, mostly one that I can think of, but we'll have to save that for later. But yeah, it should be a fun season so far. I'm really excited for new season to start.
Yeah, I will kind of go opposite of what you said. Oopsies, that's up still. Do want to go a little bit different from what you said. I want to ride this MVP Spring Kings narrative.
Yeah,
So far, they've had 3 tournaments in the spring that they participated in since the team existed, and they have won all 3 of them. 2 Frostbite wins in their bag, and they also did win out in Season 5. I think this is like a bit like, the rosters change up a bit, so who knows if it really holds, but it is a funny narrative point to pick out. And
yeah,
it is a pretty interesting roster. Noam was saying that Julian is the best jungler in the server towards the end of the Frostbite or stream, so it's up to you if you believe that or not. Want to argue a little bit, but has been putting on really good performances, and the meta is really suiting him. So we'll kind of have to see if that changes over time and other people are able to pick up the picks, or if his strong champions do end up getting nerfed. We have Valor swapping back to, in my opinion, his best role. Looking really
yeah.
good
Never
on the
been
mid
this
lane.
AD carry. Yeah,
Yeah, he did struggle a little bit in the draft games. Got a little counterpicked and definitely was struggling. But during blind pick, he looked pretty much unstoppable. Evan and Psycho Carrot clearly have a lot of synergy going for them. Really powerful bot duo. They've been looking really strong. And then we have PB and Blake as kind of like the hot swappable top laners up here, which is really interesting as well. Kind of looking forward to seeing how the team is going to handle that. But yeah, interesting team.
yeah. It should be a fun team to watch as well. Yeah,
Okay, we can go right into the roster swaps. We'll start with
yeah,
MVP since we're already talking about them a little bit, but some pretty notable players have left MVP. Heroic and Aya had been on that team since the beginning. Were able to win a championship with them, but now they're teamless. Same with Puza and Liz. Silico and Jackson actually were picked up by 101 Thieves. Silico was a bit of sub power, and so is Jackson. So getting to see them start on a different team is going to be really exciting. But I do think that MVP is losing a lot with all these players leaving. But these new pickups are looking really interesting. PB is the one that obviously is jumping out to me since he is role swapping along with it. And I think he was a
yeah,
big reason why Andromeda was kind of able to hang in the standings a little bit throughout the
yeah.
season. Julian, huge pickup, as we were talking about. Evan joining Psycho Carrot in the bot lane. Psycho moving to a starter too, which isn't on this. And then Blake also hopping in as a sub. So what are your thoughts on this? Does it make the team stronger? Does it make the team weaker? How are we feeling?
I think honestly, the team it still has sort of that MVP vibe because like I think they're keeping on this trend of having like a support player not play their main role kind of thing. That's super high points, and then like having this weird weak side volleying kind of thing that they had last season going on. Uh, which is really interesting. I think Julian coming in gives them a lot of like jungle strength in general. I think his champion pool has been shown to be pretty good. His Gragas is kind of cracked. Probably never getting through draft, but I think Evan has like a bit of a good pool for like playing strong side now that uh they're looking for more ADC power kind of thing. I think is kind of like the vibe I got from it. Like, he had champions like Nyla and Varus that are really good if you play for them, or you can weak side them as well. There's just a lot more flexibility in this comp. And the setup, in my opinion, PV playing more of like tanks so far, at least, should be pretty interesting to watch. So I'm really excited for this team. This team should be one of the really fun ones to watch. Blake as a sub is really interesting as well. So super excited for that one.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on some of your key points. I think this team is actually
Yeah,
very different than the MVP teams of the past because they don't really have like key players that you need to get ahead. Because in the past,
yeah,
it's always been like get heroic ahead, put all your resources into heroic, and see if you can get stuff done. And now you kind of move away from that. Valor can
yeah,
carry games. If you have Blake in there as top on carries, he can carry games. PB has had some really good performances too, just from what we saw in Frostbite. Evan and
yeah.
Psycho Carrot are not a weak side bot lane by any means.
I think
Completely
they
am
can
gonna.
play it though. Is
I
what
think
I
they
meant. But
can,
yeah,
but they are very good with resources, and they have a
yeah,
jungler who is very proactive in helping his lanes, which is pretty different than what we've seen.
yeah,
Normally, they've had a jungler who just kind of covers their weaknesses.
yeah,
Silico, when he was playing, would play kind of like a unique style where he'd basically just try and 1v1 whoever he could find, try and just kind of
yeah.
cause chaos and go for a lot of backdoor plays. So I think we're going to see a very different MVP team this season.
They
I'm
do
just going to
always have a
flash
high point player
this.
off rolled, but that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yep. What team do you want to do next?
uh, we can. I don't know. Honestly, let's do Andromeda next. I guess. Fuck it.
Okay. Changes for Andromeda. PB did leave. Messed up the graphic. He went to MVP, not 101 Thieves. Let me get that fixed in a second. Actually, let us go to someone else, and I'll fix that while we're working on it. Let's go to
Okay.
Metabusters.
Yeah, sure. Let's do
If
Meta
you
Buster.
want to run through this, I will get that
Yeah.
fixed up for us.
Oh my lord, Meta Busters got fucking emptied out. But I think for players leaving, Garrett, Jacob, Camerex, me, Kathy, and Tomix, I feel like they wanted to restructure their team a little bit, to have it more. I'd like to say equaled out in terms of skill level. I think Garrett, I know, is like busy with real life stuff. Uh, and I think Rex just kind of dropped off the map, so they had to like restructure their points a little bit. And for their join, I think Korn, Ticini, Future, and Hong is like a really interesting join list. I think Hong gives them a little more of that firepower. I think Ticini honestly should have been playing last season. He was he was pretty good in top lane. I think this season it should be interesting to watch him play for like a mid role. I think Future is. I think he's listed as a support player. I'm not entirely sure on where that is, but
Yeah,
I
he
think
is
he's a
listed
really solid
Phil,
support.
but I believe he should be
Yeah,
starting for them as a support.
yeah, I think he's a really solid support. He also played a lot of top lane during signups, which was really fun to watch. He was a pretty solid top laner in my opinion. Um, I know Hong is like back on 18 or 8 ping or whatever. Like he's back in Chicago. So if they play him, he should be a really spooky AD carry to play for. I have heard rumors that Noam is like benching himself to make like a superstar roster. He didn't do it for me, but he'll do it for this team, I guess. So cringe. But anyways, should be a fun team to watch. I'm actually really excited for this Metabusters team. It should be really fun to see how they perform.
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at the players that leave, they're going one of three places. They're either not playing anymore, they're going to Rift Sharks, or they're going to Spectres, which is just a little
Yeah.
silly. But yeah, no, I'm pulling a lot of new players, which is really interesting for building his team. It means that we're going to see a lot of stuff that we haven't really gotten to see before. Um, Corn up in the top lane, Tusini in the mid lane, Fujer as the support, and Stav is now their starting AD carry, which is pretty neat. I think
Yeah.
Stav and Fujer know each other IRL and like play like
Yeah.
that, so I think they
A lot
should
of
have
enhanced.
some similar
Yeah.
synergy to Evan and Psycho Carrot that we were seeing. We just didn't get to see it yet because they didn't play in Frostbite, but I think that should be something that you really want to look forward to.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think Metabusters is playing this week, so we're not going to get to see it super soon.
Hmm.
My concerns about their subs, while there is mention of Noam not wanting to play as much, I think Joey and Hong are. Hong especially is probably not going to be super available. Probably just a few games on weekends. And Joey, I feel like has always been float in, float out as needed. Usually
Yeah.
shows up more towards the end of the season. So I think we're probably going to see a lot of games with this main roster. I can flick over it real quick. Oh, hit the wrong thing. Yeah, this Korn, Noam, Tusini, Stav, and Fujer is the roster that we're probably going to see the most of, unless they're able to pick up some additional subs. But it's a
Also
lot
gonna be some
of
teaming
new
mid. Yeah.
players. And Noam
Yeah.
going back to the jungle, I do really enjoy. I think he did. really well in season 5 when he was playing for the jungle for Meta Busters. Maybe we'll actually get to see meta busting picks from Meta Busters again this season. That would be fucking
True,
crazy.
honestly.
But I don't know. I really like a lot of the picks that he is going for in the jungle previously, but it didn't really look like he was going for anything out of the box during Frostbite, so maybe we're not going to get to see it anymore. But I don't
Ooh,
know. My heart yearns for the Scion jungle, so
on
maybe we
God.
will get it. Um, okay, now we can go Andromeda. I thought I fixed it. My
Yippee!
apologies for that. Um, but yes, so PB left to go to Masked Valor and Pirates, not 101 Thieves. Sorry, I made these in a rush. Alex D and Healy are all not on a team. Alex, I think, is the interesting one there. D and Healy didn't
Criminal.
really end up playing much. Hong, I think, is again just going to a different team where he's probably not going to get too many games in. But the joined players are what I really want to focus on. You get Brewer, who was like the most awarded player last season, maybe of any player in any season ever, had a crazy run. I will argue some of it is just because his team's really good and dedicated all their resources towards making him look good. So we'll kind of see how that plays out over the course of the season. Honan moving from a sub role into a starting role, and it's going to be on ADC, which I think is one of his better roles. I think it support Thresh Honan is like right up here at the top. Then I think ADC Honan is a step down, and then I think his other support picks are just below that. So they
Yeah, I
did
think it's
show
gonna
in
be it.
Frostbite that he's able to just play Thresh, and Dad will play ADC, which is really interesting. But
Yeah.
I don't know. And then Dad and Lithy coming from not being on a team, I think Dad is a really interesting pickup. From my knowledge, I don't think Lithy is going to be playing in too many games, but is helpful to have there as a sub. And then you could have the like three player synergy between Arne, Apari, and Lithy because I think they're all players who play together a lot. But I will
Yeah.
kick it to their. Okay, I keep hiding the wrong thing. But I will kick it to the roster page so we can kind of look at it. But is there anything you want to talk about with this team in particular?
Yeah. I think REA finally starting in a more starting position for their top lane is super interesting. I think he's shown like a pretty wide champion pool. It should be really interesting to watch him play out this season. I'm really excited to watch him get a starting spot. Apari has also been pretty, I'd say, decent in the jungle role. His Kane goes crazy; it gets banned every game, so we'll have to see what else he's got in the tank. Really, I think Greer in the mid lane. There are some sources that told me a lot of the hype was a little overblown for him. We'll have to see how that really shakes out for him because I think on this team it's more so him and Dad as like a support mid. I think that's where most of their points are, right?
Uh, I think so. Yeah, that sounds
Yeah,
right.
and so I'm really excited to see how they pair up as like a mid support duo and try to like impact them out together. That should be really interesting to watch. Uh I think Dad plays a lot of Bard, if I remember
Yes.
correctly.
Yeah. Or
Yeah, that's like a
someone
really
plays
fun
a lot of
shape to
Bard. I'm
watch.
always unsure. I
Yeah,
don't know.
should be a really fun shape to watch. I think Conan's EDC pool can kind of play for like this weak side style that Bard tries to use. So I'll have to see what really happens in these games. But yeah, I'm really excited to watch this team. Honan on 80 carry, I think is gonna be a really fun time. His Varus is super cracked.
Right.
His Ash is like okay as well.
Yeah, we've seen
But
him
yeah,
on the Xerath and Jhin as well. I think the more Meiji
yeah,
style is something he's really comfortable with because even when he plays Varus, he usually plays AP Varus. So I expect to see a
yeah.
lot of meta busting with Honan in the bot lane. He is the meta buster after all. I don't care if there's a team named that. He's the one that does it.
True.
But what
No
jumps
fake
out
meta buster. Boo.
what jumps out to me about this team immediately is there's 4 champions you really want to ban every time. There's the Kane, there's the Syndra, there's the Echo, and there's the Thresh for the bot lane. I think Bard is a concerning champion, but
Yeah.
I do think playing around a Bard in the style that Bards normally play does create weaknesses for your team that you're able to exploit through draft. So I don't think it's necessarily a champion you need to ban. We've had other really good Bard players before, and we haven't really seen that taken off the table a lot. It's more of like a you just draft around it more so than try and ban it. So I wonder if we're going
Yeah.
to see that adaptation come out. But still, with all these champions that you're looking to get off the table, and you can't really sleep on Arnia either. Like all of these players have really strong picks, so that should
Yeah.
be pretty interesting. Just as a side note, I think it's funny that four of them has support in their roles as a starter, but I obviously
True.
doesn't really mean anything, and I don't know if I've ever seen Brewer or Arnier play support, so who knows how
We
relevant
could.
it is. But anyway, silly team. Um, I would imagine, given how Andromeda played last season, that none of the four starters or none of the four subs are really going to see much playing time. Stanley typically
Yeah.
doesn't tend to run people that much, but I mean, I'd like to see these players play more. I was hoping to see them on different teams to kind of open up those ideas. I think Jonah's looked really good in a lot of games in the offseason, especially on these different roles. He was subbing for other teams during Frostbite, looked really good.
Yep.
So I think we could see some fill potential coming out from him subbing for different roles for his team, but
A lot of the weeks
we'll
I'd
see.
go. Yeah.
Yep. Where do you want to go next? We have Rift Sharks, we have Spectres, and we have 101
We'll
Thieves.
do R2. Let's do R2. Let's do
Okay.
R2.
Yeah, no, we're never beating the bias allegations now because we've joined the same team, but
Sure.
yeah.
True.
Oh,
True. Well,
yeah,
I spent the entirety of last season's learning Rift Sharks, so
this
we
is
can come
true.
back, I guess.
Well, Rift Sharks has a fucking boring ass graphic. We grabbed three Metabusters players and lost two players who didn't go anywhere, and Taxi is like released from his shackles, I guess, in his own terms.
Yeah.
Some like weird availability roster conflict stuff went on last season, so I am really excited to see Taxi play more games. I was hoping that he'd be
Yeah.
able to, but things beyond my control, etc., etc. Anne and Michael, definitely sad to see them go as pretty good friends of mine, as well as former teammates. So heart hurts a little bit. Maybe we will coerce Michael to rejoin, but I think he has a bit of IRL activity, so that's probably better than playing League of Legends if we're being honest. But
True.
the like Metabusters steal is really funny. Thomas obviously has been on Rift Sharks 2 seasons ago in season 5.
That was 2 seasons ago.
Yeah,
Jeez. Anyway.
it's about a year. So I'm really glad to have him back. I really enjoy playing with Thomas. I think we have a roster setup where we're able to play with him more. And I
Yeah.
think some of the issues present in our season 5 roster are no longer a problem. We've kind of worked through them. Mason finally rejoining us from the KGS era. So
Yeah.
we do have the whole team back together with the exception of Michael. But if we're able to get him back, then we do have the full KGS roster on Rift Sharks, which is kind of nuts. And Jacob can tell you no one expected this. The Dean Jacob anti synergy beef narrative from all the way back in season 2 is very well known. But no, Jacob and I are very good friends. We can work past this stuff.
We
But
believe.
yeah, just a little funny note. But no, I'm really excited to have him on the team. I just think it is a little silly, given the narrative side of it. But do you have
Yeah.
any comments about these swaps, or do you want me to just head over to the roster page so we can look at it in full?
We can just look at the roster page in full,
All right.
honestly.
Yep. So the full roster is going to be Drago, Hadiri, Joel, Dean, Eric O, which is everyone that we had last season. Plus, instead of Ann, Michael, and Taxi, we now have Jacob, Mason, and Thomas. So very similar style of roster to what we had previously. A more like resource heavy jungler compared to like a jungler that plays more with the team, although they've kind of like swapped up a little bit. Basically, just two jungle options, and then a few subs that can really fill into a bunch of different roles. Eric and Thomas both being fill subs is pretty interesting. But
Yeah.
anything you want to talk about in particular? I don't want to talk too much because I'll kind of give away things I have in my
Yeah.
head. But
Yeah, I mean,
feel free.
I'll just say on a personal level, I am really excited to play with Joel and Dean again. Drago has always performed super well in top lane as well, so I'm just really excited to play with this team again. A really fun roster, so that's really it, honestly.
Yeah, we'll keep it short. Not too many changes, and don't want to
Biased,
stick
yeah,
to the bias too much, right? Let's do 101 Thieves first,
yeah, I'm
and
down.
then end on Spectres.
Yeah,
101 Thieves, a bit of an interesting change. Mike, Dave, Dominic, Russ, Adam, and Mimi all leaving to no team, which is a bit interesting. Blake going over to MVP, as we've already discussed, moving it to a sub. He didn't play many games for this team last season, so I don't think it's necessarily like super surprising. to see him go. He kind of
Yeah,
joined at the last minute. We did get the fucking banger series where he played a bunch of weird picks, so that was really fun. I'm excited to see more of him. But I do want to keep
yeah,
the focus on 101 Thieves. They're getting four completely new starters to their team, complete roster swap. Only person saying the same is Will. Um, Hopefully they do get Dominic back. Still having my fingers crossed for that. I haven't heard anything, but Jid finally making a return. Hasn't played in 3 or 4 seasons at this point. Was a finalist in season one, but we hadn't heard much from him since then. But
yeah,
really excited to see him come back. Huge Bard player, really good with aggressive, engaging supports. He's one of the most aggressive players that we've had in the support role. I think Psycho Carrot
yeah.
and Eric are the only ones that even come close. But if you haven't seen a lot of Jid's games, expect like 0 and 10 score lines, but he's the best player on the team. Like, it's so weird watching him play, but he just gets so much stuff done and isn't afraid to sacrifice his life to set up like a quadra kill for his team overall.
Yeah,
So, really exciting player. Taxi, I've already talked about. Really exciting player. Just had some weird roster issues last season. Wasn't able to get him as many games as we would have liked. So, really happy that he has a starting spot now. I was definitely talking to a bunch of people behind the scenes trying to get him into a good spot. And then Jackson and Silica were passed over from Valor onto 101 Thieves. Will had previously played with these players back in season 5 when they did end up winning. So you could
yeah.
argue that maybe the MVP Spring King's legacy is going over to 101 Thieves. I don't know if you think there's any merit to that or not, but we can just take a peek
No,
at the full roster, which
yeah.
is actually only the players that we've mentioned so far. They're still working on finding
Those
subs,
stuff.
which is why I have my fingers crossed for Dominic, but we'll see.
Yeah, I do think it should be fun. I think if they maintain the roles that they are right now with Silica jungling and Taxi mid, I don't know like what their plans are for this season. I think there's like a lot of
Yeah, I think if
flexible routes with going
anything
Jackson jungle and
changes, Silico and Jackson
Silica
might
top.
swap,
Yeah,
but it's just guesswork.
but I think Taxi is a pretty solid mid laner. Played a bit of solo queue with him last season. Very fun to play with, in my opinion. Uh, Finally hit diamond. Proud, good for him on that. But it should be fun team to watch. I think Jid making his return from aeons ago with like Will. Uh, I think this is like a really solid team. We'll have to see how it shakes out for them though, because I think Will historically has been a very okay. AD carry has been good value for his team to like get. Uh, it's like the low point player thing where it's they are low points, but they can enable a lot of really good rosters and still be worth like the ADC, good in the ADC role kind of thing. So I'll have to see how they choose to utilize their roster, but it should be a really fun team to watch.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on Will have always been like maybe he's like not considered one of the stronger picks, but there's a lot of champions that if you just let him have access to and don't counterpick,
Yeah,
like he's just gonna wipe you. Like the Jinx win rate haha meme is like really funny, but his Jinx is pretty solid. The Kaisa and the Twitch are the ones that I really like to point out though. Twitch obviously does draw a lot of bans, so taking away bans from other players on his team is really good to have, good value. And then his Kais is kind of ridiculous. Unfortunately, Champion is kind of weak right now, so I am
yeah,
excited to see what he does with his picks. Twitch, I think, is in a decent spot, but I'm assuming that's probably going to get banned a lot. So if he picks up
yeah,
some different champions, I feel like hyper carries are off to the side a little bit in favor of like more of the like mid game on hit ADCs. Just from my
yeah,
meta read, I haven't been paying too much attention to it, but I also know Will and Jake are not opposed to doing like double mage bots, double enchantresses, and they could just turbo weak side, or Will could pick up some sort of off meta ADC, and Jid could
yeah,
play a tank and roam the map. I think the synergy between these players is not something you can really overlook, and I'm glad to
yeah,
see them reunite on a team. They haven't been on a team together, or actually they have. Never mind. I'm lying. I'm lying. They have been on a team together in like seasons 2 and 3, but they used to be on the same team like every season. So getting to see them reunite is really cool. It has been a while
yeah,
though. It's like 3 or 4 seasons,
yeah,
as I said about Jid overall. But really excited to see who this team picks up as a sub, and I think this roster by itself is still really exciting.
Uh-huh.
even if they are the only 5 people that ever play. So we can head over to Spectres.
Spectres, Spectres.
They gained a lot more players than they lost, but they did lose Gruer, and supposedly Gruer like the goat, right? So
Yeah.
I
Uh,
don't know.
yeah, Guru did leave, Hudden left, Z left, but they did pick up Kathy from Metabusters. Captain Coffee, our resident rioter, favorite rioter, has also joined the team as well. Cam coming in from Metabusters in sub position with Caesarius, like kind of doing the swap off, I think, because Caesarius is going to be a bit more busy this season. And then they also picked up Eden and Kai. I think these are Kathy's friends. So
Yeah,
uh, should be a really interesting roster to watch. I'm really excited to see what happens. I think Captain Coffee has been a pretty solid ADC from what I've seen so far, and then I think Cam and Caesarius are pretty similar in jungle skill level, so I'm really excited to see that as well.
yeah. I think Captain Coffee is another one of those players. It's kind of in like Will's category, where if you let
Yeah,
him play safe on a hyper carry, like you're really going to be suffering in the late game.
yeah,
So I don't know. It's a lot of people tend to sleep on ADCs, but ADC is a role that if your team plays around you, you can really be good as long as you have a base level of mechanics. And I don't think there's any ADCs in this server that don't have that base level mechanics at least on a couple of their picks,
yeah,
which is pretty interesting. I think Gruer and Honan leaving. Gruer way more so than Honan. Not because I don't think Honan's a good player. I just don't think he played that much for Spectres last season. But them losing
yeah,
Gruer is pretty impactful, so it's going to change the way that they play. But we do get to see Sarvis's return to mid lane.
yeah.
Oh, yes. I'm really happy because I don't have to play against him in ADC anymore. Getting absolutely dumpstered by an off-role ADC player it sucks. It's not fun. But now he's back to the mid lane. Not my problem anymore.
True.
Which personally I applaud. But Avery Caesarius staying the same. Mythic, I believe, hates League of Legends now and probably won't be playing much. So Coffee and Cam are probably going to be the subs we see the most of. I think Eden and Kai are there as well. I'm not really sure how much they're going to be utilized. I was able to talk to Cyrus a bit about his roster, but didn't find out too much. So kind of
Yeah,
excited to see if Eden and Kai are going to get a lot of play time. I know we saw a lot of Eden during Frostbite at least, which was pretty interesting. But Bean finally getting to start is really interesting because we saw him sub a lot in a couple different roles for the Spectres. I'd expect if maybe Coffee comes in, Bean probably shifts up towards the top lane and we get to see more like the Kale Fiora kind of stuff, Mordekaiser, all picks that we've seen from him. So it should be really exciting. But
yeah. This roster should be really fun to watch. So
yeah, I feel like to me personally, Spectres is the biggest question mark because we haven't really gotten to see uh, like much of the roster put together at all. Metabusters, we've seen like 80% of it, but
yeah,
Spectres, we have not seen more than like uh, 2 or 3 of their starters all play at the same time.
yeah. And they still did like decent in Frostbite, so
Yeah, I
very
mean,
spooky team
they
to watch.
unfortunately did make the bracket stage, but they're able to grab a win, um, which does put them slightly above the bottom. So we
Wait, did
do
they only
have,
win one game? I thought they
yeah,
won more than that. Oh, I'm
no.
tripping beans. Then never mind.
Okay, Mason memory, new topic
Skill
of
issue.
debate, but
True.
we'll have to see. But anyway, we have gone over all the teams, so I think,
They're doing the fabled power rankings.
yeah. Well, we'll do. Apparently, we did this last season. I don't fucking remember. So, if this is like real or not, like I am questioning. Oh, that is bright. I'm so sorry.
Oh, jeez.
I don't know what I was working on. It looks similar to Rift Shark's color, but that is not Rift Shark's color. I can guarantee you that one. But okay. I think something we allegedly did last season is we kind of gave grades to each of the teams for how well they performed in the off season. So let
Oh, we
let me
like
set
rated
this
the
up.
we rated the roster swaps. No, I swear we did.
Yeah, I mean, I have zero recollection of this, but I it sounds like something I would do.
I'm down for that. Honest,
So yeah, um, I think what
you
we can
really
do
spelled out
is
the entire
each.
name, eh?
Yeah, why not? Is we can each give them a grade and then I'll kind of like average them out. But For
Uh,
101 Thieves, last season compared to this season, do you have any initial thoughts?
uh, not really. Um, I think the roster's a bit of a downgrade, but they didn't do super well last time, so eh, it's like a C to me. I don't know. It's like a they swapped out a lot of carry players like Adam and Blake, but they got Silico and Taxi, so should be pretty solid IMO. But I do think they lost like a lot of their uh they lost like some of their stronger players like Adam and whatnot. So see.
Yeah, I was actually going to go in the complete opposite direction. I feel like last season their roster was just like a bunch of players that got shambled together at the end. Like there was no real like intention in how the roster was formed.
Yeah,
But I feel like this season they clearly like put in some work, found players ahead of time.
that
Not
makes
subs,
sense.
but still players. And Silico and Jackson and Will already have that inbuilt synergy. Will's able to pick up Jid, who already works pretty well with him. And I feel like
Okay, I didn't think about
Taxi
that one, but
is
yeah.
a good slot in there. I think this team if I'm looking at three of the players on this team, I won't name names, but I think there is a bit of like a tilt problem potentially. But
No, go ahead.
if
Name
you
some
look
names.
at
Go ahead.
season
No,
six
no, no. Hold on.
Nutbusters and
Name
tell me
some
there's
names.
not a tilt problem there, they're not really going up or down in that angle. So I think with the increase in synergy, you're probably looking at an A plus from me for this team. I think they went with a team that had no real identity. You always had like four or five people all trying to be the carries. It was a bit of a mess. I feel like Mike
Yeah,
was kind of the glue that held the team together, but only slightly, and it usually ended up in him having to play something that wasn't his strength to try and even it out.
yeah.
But now they look like a team that actually knows what they're doing. You have a pretty
Okay.
easy like weak side top and bot, and you can have this strong point that you play through mid. And because you had Heroic play mid with MVP in season five, three players there, Jackson, Silico, Will, already know how to play around that. It's just you have a swap going from Heroic to Taxi. But I think you're upgrading in the support category in terms of being able to create a strong point on the map. Jid's roams are really good, and that's something that I'm really looking forward to from this team. So I think that does put our overall at a B/B plus. So moving
Yeah,
down
something
to
like that.
Andromeda, what are your thoughts?
Um, Gosh, they have like a lot of synergy on this team, I think. But like, I think strength of the roster overall at the end, I think it went or it stayed about the same. Uh, because like you used to have Alana and Jonah as like the weaker side top lane, and then they swapped it out for Apari and Arnia, which I think is like kind of an upgrade. Just in terms of like flexibility a little bit. I know Apari is still a bit of a received as a bit of a Kane one trick, but I think he has some other good picks. Um, Arya has a pretty flexible champion pool. I think Greer was better than Stanley. Still probably is, but we'll have to see how he plays. I think Honan and Dad for PV and Alex is like probably a little weaker, but I don't think by a significant margin. I'd say this roster is probably like a B or A. I'd say B probably.
If you're between B
That's
and A,
just my
let's
read.
let's do a little B plus action.
Well, B plus, sure, we can do that.
Yeah, my take on Andromeda is I think last season they had five good players. They
Yeah,
didn't have a team. You
they
have
have
five
five
players who
good.
all want to do completely different things. Jonah's really good at setting up a snowball to facilitate a really strong mid laner, really strong top laner. Neither of which you really had. Stanley's a really good player, but he doesn't. He's like more of a supportive player. He doesn't do well when
Yeah.
you dedicate resources to him. And then
Mm.
PB is really good when he's able to roam the map and get other people online. So you have PB and Jonah as really good setup for solo lane carries that didn't really exist because both of your solo lanes are playing more supportive style champions. So you don't really have an identity. Once they swapped over to trying to just focus purely on PB and Alex, they started having some success. But once you realize that the team's only win condition is playing through a certain lane, it's really easy to counter. But looking
Mm.
at this season, you have still a weaker side top jungle, but something that's like a bit more able to stand up on its own. And then Honan, I don't know too much about Dad, so I don't want to speak on it too much, but I know Honan and Brewer are both able to be incredibly fed and help carry games on their own. And I think with that setup that you're seeing from the top in jungle, you're able to dedicate more resources to more than one lane, which I think is a
Yeah.
lot more cohesive. So I do want to give like a, I don't know. We'll throw a little S in there for Andromeda from me. I think they
Okay.
went from a team that just looked kind of lost, and it looked like they just assembled a bunch of players together that liked playing together and like were friends, but there was no actual focus on team identity or like
Mhm.
any sort of strategy. And then you swap over to a team where clearly there is like a concept that you're going for with the team. And I think we did see some of that in Frostbite because they started off 4-0 during the Swiss. They were undefeated with their main roster. So they did have objectives that they were going towards and able to achieve. So
I got dumped
averaging,
through virus sharks. How good they can they be?
this is
Joke,
true,
TM.
but
Joke, TM.
averages out to an A plus overall.
Yeah.
But looking at MVP, what are you thinking there?
I think I know that just lost Heroic and Aya, but I think strictly just in terms of like Frostbite performance as well, I think this team made upgrades all across the board. This is probably like my easiest S on here. Like I think most of their roster changes have helped them become a more cohesive team in my opinion. So uh that's really about it for me. I'm not gonna lie. But
Gotcha. In my mind, like a B plus, A minus, or yeah, like a B is a team that goes even. And
uh
MVP had a really good team last season. Did I think
yeah.
that their like coaching strategy throughout the season was very good? Absolutely
No.
not. Like I'm gonna be real. I'm sorry, Valor. I am slandering the fuck out of you. There were some win conditions that you could have had on that team, and there was no play around it. There were some games where you stumbled into it, and I would just pocket the fuck out of Heroic, and we'd have some crazy pop off games, draft resources going to both of those players. They were able to get good picks, play around each other, and had really good stuff going on. But that just wasn't consistent at all. But I think you could have had equal success keeping the same roster and focusing down on what made that roster strong. But swapping over to this roster, you have a team that has basically the same amount of outcomes that are positive. It's just I think you're a little more focused on it. So in my mind, I think this is only like a B plus. I think
Okay.
like while it is a really good team, I think they had a really good team last year too. So I think it all is really going
Okay.
to come down to like coaching and roster management and how they're able to work on their synergy, which you do
I
have
could
some with Psycho Carrot and Evan, but you also did have some with Aya and Heroic previously. So I don't think this is like a huge upgrade, but their coaching does look like it's improved a lot. So this one's also going in the A plus overall category
yeah.
because of the same ratings. But moving over to Metabusters, what are you thinking here? I can
Um
recap real quick what the roster changes were.
No, I remember all of them.
Okay,
Don't worry. It's a person who was on that team
that is
previously.
true. That is
I
true.
can remember. Don't worry. I think this roster went down in terms of like overall player skill, and I think they lost like a lot of good players and weren't able to hold on to them, in my opinion. So I'm not entirely sure because I still think this team is like pretty solid. It's just lack of able to retain players and I think roster strength did just go down. I think this is like another C plus, something like that.
I'll do a CC plus for you. Um,
Okay.
I don't know. I think it's really hard to really evaluate this roster strength. It's really good to see. I think Noam and Stav both moved to a better position overall on the roster, where Noam's playing a role where he's proven himself over time that he's pretty comfortable on it, and seeing Stav
Yeah.
move forward to a starting role is really good. I do think I agree with you that you're losing Cam in the jungle. You're losing Rex as a sub, and I think you're a good player, so I'm glad you're on my team and not on that team anymore. But I think one of the real strengths that this team had previously was roster flexibility. But I do think there are a lot of internal issues leading towards the end of last season, which I think probably contributed to why so many players left. I think they were only able to retain one, two, three players are able to keep Joey, Stav, and Noam. Two of those being subs, one being main roster. So I do think there's a lot of turnover. And I would imagine that Noam probably would have liked to hold on to a couple more players, but not entirely
Certain
sure
people on his
because
team.
he could have, there's also the standpoint that the captain feels that the players were the problem, so maybe getting rid of them is better. But I think you're seeing a bit of an upgrade in terms of Stav and Fujer having inbuilt synergy, and
Mhm.
Tusini being a player that's able to flex across top and mid. And I know Noam has also played some of both of those roles. I think you're getting some flexibility, but I don't think I'm seeing like a huge change in the roster. I think there's a lot of potential here, but I don't think it's as guaranteed of like a win as you're seeing elsewhere. So I'll probably go for like a B plus there.
Okay.
Leaning towards a B as well, but I think we can just go what's like in between B plus C minus. I don't know. We'll just do like C plus B minus for this team. I think they
Sure.
stay pretty
Oh,
even, and I think if they're able to kind of get their stuff together and keep playing, I think we could see a lot from this team. But I think last team their roster was insane, so I think it's kind of hard
true.
to say it improved much. Do just want to restate that these are not. I think this team gets this rating as a team. This is like the changeover season. The power rankings
Yeah.
are what we're really going to want to be looking at for our guesses at the overall strength of teams. Again, we're very likely to be wrong. No one kind of like showed the power rankings from last season and like put them in our face, but someone should have. So if you want to go back to the beginning of the season and
No,
tell us we're
no,
fucking
that never happened.
morons,
Uh, I
yeah,
know what you're
so
talking
so
about.
true. Never do that. But moving on to Rift Sharks.
Did we just throw off the S and be biased, or? I think this is a pretty solid roster change.
Yeah, I mean I don't. Okay,
I'll go A.
okay.
To be honest, I think getting a strict jungle upgrade, managing to retain a lot of the players, stuff like that. So
Slandering Adiri, even though he's still the
no,
starting
no, no.
jungler.
I'm
Shit does not
slandering and
change.
not
Oh,
Hadiri.
okay.
Hold on. Hold
Okay.
on. I'm slandering and not Hadiri. Let's
Okay.
relax here. I taught Ann how to play jungle. Okay, I'm allowed to say I'm better than them. Like, come on now.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'll say like A minus, A plus. I don't think anything really changed enough to
Yeah,
make like a
that's
huge
fair.
change, but
I'm being benched in real time. Relax, Hadiri. I was literally just about to drag Ann across the street,
yeah.
bro. Like, come on, bro.
I don't know. I think we'll go with a A minus overall here. I think
Yeah,
not too much change. We're really seeing the same core of players, and it just feels like a necessary upgrade required with the way the season's changed season to season. But I'm really excited for the roster, but I don't know if we necessarily made like huge bounding strides or anything like really
yeah,
revolutionary. Moving on to Spectres, there were a lot of changes, so I am going to pull that back up just for reference. Also, we've been
yeah.
talking a while since we did it, but Gruer and Honan leaving, and Sarvis, Bean, and Kathy are the new additions to the starters, which is the big change. How are you feeling?
Um, I think overall, a lot of players did leave, but they also managed to pull like a bunch of new players into the reserve, and like they have a lot of like interesting roster potential. Like they have a lot of interesting swaps that they could do. So I think overall, this team is another A for me. I think it's like a pretty solid roster. I think Sarvers did a really good job this season of trying to recruit players, in my opinion, and like build a really good roster for himself. So I think he did a solid job. I was a shoe in for this team, and then Dean performed an act of kidnapping to get me on his team. So
Oh well. Um, I think, uh, yeah, as you said, I think some stuff did go on towards the end of the off season, which kind of made things a little complicated. I
yeah,
think this roster has gotten a little worse, in my opinion. I think the cam pickup is really good, and I think that is kind of saving it a bit. But the team's identity last season, if we're being honest, is give every fucking resource on the map to Brewer and just play around that, and he's not there anymore. Sarvis still a really good mid laner, but I think part of the reason why it works so well is that Sarvis was basically able to just dictate the way that bot lane went by himself. It didn't matter what the other three people in the lane did. And this is something that I've heard from people on a bunch of different teams. It just felt like no matter what you did, it's really hard to force bot lane to go in a way that Cerberus didn't want it to go. And I think that's why you're able to dedicate so many resources to Avery and Brewer in the top side and kind of activate stuff. And so you're moving Cerberus up to mid lane, and Avery's still staying in the top side. So you do have two mid lane carries. We saw Cerberus and Guru play against each other in Frostbite. Um, I know someone got a slight advantage in the lane. I completely forget who it was. It might have been Brewer. Or it might have been Cerberus. My memory is terrible. But they seemed pretty even overall. It was more how the pace of the game was going overall and not really down to their specific individual skill. From my perspective, could be wrong, but I think you're basically going even in the top side because you don't really end up changing anything. I think Sarvis for Guru is a pretty even swap, but you don't have that same strength of bot lane, which allowed the strategy to work. So I think we're going to have to see something different come out from them, and I think you don't really have that glue of Sarvis in the ADC position anymore to hold the team together. So I am going to give my first negative score here with like a C for this team, which does give them an overall B. But
Uh,
those are our overall ratings on the roster swaps. Obviously, this is just personal opinion. Like, this is not fact. Like, do not like slander the captains or anything for this. I think all the captains or most of the captains did a really good job in the offseason, kind of working together and making the season happen, which I really appreciate. And everyone was super present for Frostbite. And I am not knocking any of the captains here. I just think someone has to lose out on the offseason. So anyone who is a little negative simply got unlucky with how things worked.
True.
But no, I'm really excited for all these rosters. And on that note, we can head into power rankings. I believe we have about 13 and a
10
half
minutes.
minutes
Give me.
left.
Yeah, 10 minutes. 13 minutes, whatever. Same thing.
Yep. So we will do the Mason's power rankings, if I can spell, on this side, and then, oh my god,
Oh,
on this side. And then we'll do the little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we'll do a little of copy and paste over here. How have we done this in the past? Do you remember? It was it like we each did one seed at a time, or did we just do the whole power rankings at once? Or better question, how do you want
we
to do it
stopped.
now?
We really just swapped around. We could start from the bottom and go to the top if you want. I think we always did bottom or top to bottom, so I don't know. We can change it up.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna be real. I haven't even remotely like thought of this.
No, I've thought about it a little bit
Okay,
since I was
so you
younger.
go ahead and let me just
Do you want
let
me
me
to
go
start from
after.
the
Yeah,
bottom?
yeah, yeah. Do whatever
Yeah.
you'd please.
Um. God, is it ego to put Meta Busters at 6 for fun?
They lost me, so they must suck now.
Yeah. You know what? Fuck yeah. I think it's kind of funny. I do think their roster is really competitive. Not to, don't get me wrong, but I do think Meta Busters is sort of like has drawn the short straw in terms of rosters. I think it's hard to find a carry identity outside of Stav. I think Ticini is okay at it, but I don't think he stacks up in comparison to the rest of the league. But we'll have to see. That was just my read on it.
Okay,
But
let's actually alternate one by one. We'll each place a team.
yeah,
I already mentioned it before. I think MVP should be expected to win. Their roster looks so good. They're historically really good in the spring, and I think they've stumbled into a lot of synergy, which I think is the only thing that teams ever been lacking. So, especially with
yeah,
what Valor was saying towards the end of Frostbite, where they've already been talking a lot of strategy, trying to figure out the best angles for their team. I think that puts them in a really good position. Strong roster, strong synergy. Where's the weak point?
yeah. No, I agree. I think for my fifth place team, also Ticini saying this feels like an anti-meta Buster stream. Nah, bro, I'm sorry. This is just like the only team I can really put down here, in my opinion. Like, I don't know. That there's like a lot of question marks in my opinion, so we'll have to see. But I think for my fifth place team, I think I will go ahead and put. God, I think it is Andromeda. I think Brewer is a crazy player, but I'm not entirely sure how the top side is uh gonna stack up versus the rest of the league. I think they're decent, but I don't know how decent into the rest of the league is my opinion. So also, yeah. That was really just my read. Also, Mason's a hater because I didn't sign him. Potentially true, but I don't
Sorry.
know, dude. Team flamed out after I went on vacation for a week, so I don't know, man.
Hey, also, you haven't seen where I plays Metabusters, so it is what it is. Um, I just think that they had a fucking crazy roster that was a nightmare to draft against in the past, and the fact that they don't have 10 players anymore is why I put their roster overall as a downgrade. But did you get to the fifth place team, or did you get on a little tangent there?
I did place fifth place team. It was Andromeda.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Um, Looking at my brain, trying to figure out where I think anyone else would go. Uh, Let me put 101 Thieves at fifth, where they currently stand. That's my read. I
Okay.
think they're a strong team. I think they're missing some depth to their roster, and I think it is pretty easy to identify where their strong and weak points are and play around them. I think if they're able to acquire more players, this could definitely change. But I think the core of Taxi Silico Jid is really fucking strong. And I think that's going to be able to keep them out of the bottom, but I do think they're going to struggle a little bit just because I feel like the champ pools and stuff don't necessarily line up in the way that they're going to need to be able to compete with some of the other teams that I have higher up on top.
Okay. I do. Speaking of 101 Thieves, I do think I'm going to slot them here in here at fourth. I think overall, roster just looks pretty good. I know Jackson historically has been a bit of a weaker player, but I think a roster of Silico, Taxi, and Jid should not place anything below fourth. I think Silico has shown that he has a pretty solid champion pool and can sort of just dictate where like dictate you having to put resources into shutting him down. Otherwise, he can't just take over games. He can also flop super hard. He's a bit of a coin flip player, but I do think he does demand a lot of attention in terms of like draft resources and whatnot. I think Taxi has a similar thing. Um, has had like pretty solid performances historically, but that's just my read on this team. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're placing them in similar places, and now you're kind of forcing me to pick another team. Do I do it? Do I do it?
gonna
Okay. We're putting Rift second. I'm egoing a little bit here. I think we have a really solid roster. I think we did really well last time. Maybe I'm just doing the direct ripoff of the rankings from Frostbite. Maybe, maybe not. It's very close, but I'm really confident in our roster, and I think we have a lot of strategy that we are able to work together. I think somewhere that we did struggle last season was I was kind of like soloing a lot of the strategy, which I think was hurting us a bit. So having the ability to kind of revisit the way we think about stuff like that should help.
yippee. Um, I guess for me, I think third is going to be Spectres. I do think you will feel the loss of Guerrero from this team. Um, and I know Cesarius is going for more of a splitting time angle with Cam, I think, is what I've heard. I'm not entirely sure, though. Cam is mostly looking at a sub position. So it's going to be interesting to watch. But I think overall, I think they're still a really spooky team. But I do think it is a bit of a downgrade. I guess this does reveal my 1 and 2 is similar to Dean Jones's. So, but yeah, I think it's Spectres for third
Okay.
here.
Oh my, ooh, okay. Spelling is rough here.
Ooh, ooh.
Um, uh-oh. Uh, so I
I mean, if you
moved out a bit of spice for the bottom. I
want,
know what the rest of my rankings are. Do you want to pick 3, 4, and or 6, and I will simply reveal which team it is?
do 4.
Okay, so 4, I do have Andromeda in 4. I
Okay.
think they have a solid roster. I think there's not as many strong points as you are going to need to compete with some of the higher up teams.
Uh-huh.
But I do think there's a lot of potential there, and I think those bans that are necessary against this team, as I pointed out earlier, are going to
Wait,
be a strength for them in draft. But I just don't necessarily know how they're going to line up overall.
wait. So does this mean we just have the same roster, same power rankings, but Andromeda and 100 Thieves are just swapped?
See, you'd think that, wouldn't you?
Wait.
What is your next one, Mason?
I'll put Reflex in second. Ego, whatever.
Okay,
I think
same
MVP does
reasoning I
demand.
gave, or
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And
I do think we're actually good, but yeah,
yeah.
you do have
And
to say.
here's where I like blow everyone's minds away. I'm putting Metabusters third and then putting
Oh
Spectres at the
yeah.
bottom. But I don't know. Maybe I'm like cooking a bit too hot. Like the pot is like on fire, all the food is burnt. But we will see. I think
Well, this is some
Metabus.
crazy slander on Sarver's mid lane or what? That's
Hey, I no,
wild.
no, no, no. I don't think the Sarver's mid lane is the issue. I think the team's a little bit one dimensional, especially if you're having to swap in and out in the jungle. I think the two junglers go for very different styles of play. I think it's going to be a bit hard to adapt to it because I think playing around your jungler is one of the most important things a team can do. And because normally they do affect the map the most, so having to swap around that, especially when you have two different play styles, is a bit interesting because Caesarius would play carries, but he'll play carries and build tank on them. We see a lot of tank Diana, more of a tankier Lilia build coming out from him. Whereas Cam will go like full damage, so there is a bit of
Yeah, and
a
I can't
draft
convince him to
difference
play
there.
Wukong for some reason, so I live in
Yeah,
pain every day.
but I think that's gonna be hard to play around, and I think just that strength in the bot lane that you have, just from like a shot calling perspective. I personally haven't seen that coming from either Bean or Kathy. I don't think they're weaker players. I just think the way in which they play the game is different enough that you lose some of what made Spectre so good last season. Metabusters, I think, is a complete wild card because so many of these players are new. So I don't really feel comfortable putting him too far out of the middle, which is why I kind of have them and Andromeda stacked up in the middle there. I think there's definitely some legal room. Like 100 Thieves could
Uh-huh.
maybe go up a little bit, and Metabusters and Andromeda could maybe go down. Like this, that 3-4-5 spot is really hard for me to have a read on, but this is my guess. Again, I've historically been really bad at these, so don't take anything I say super seriously. But this is my initial guess. And with it wrapping down to about 2 or 3 minutes left, I think we can just head over to predictions pretty easily.
Yeah.
But two of them are going to be really easy predictions because the bias must shine through, or the team confidence must shine through. But here, let me get swapped over to that. I think these two games we are both going to predict Rift Sharks 2-0. But
Barely.
Andromeda versus Mass Valor and Pirates, now that one
Oh,
is a
these are
really
all kind
interesting
of.
one because Andromeda and MVP were the two top performing teams during the Swiss stage of Frostbite. MVP did lose out versus Andromeda, but they were able to beat every single other team that they played. So do you
Oh,
think
they
they're
lost to
going to be
Andromeda.
able to get the win?
So wait, Andromeda literally just lost to our MVP lost to Andromeda, and then we followed the fuck out of them, and then MVP lost beat us. That's funny as fuck. Anyways, I think MVP
You
had a
can
lot of
tell
it.
Mason watched the Frostbite streams, by the way.
Surely, I think MVP. I think MVP did benefit a lot from blind pick in Frostbite, so we'll have to see how they change up in terms of drafting versus Andromeda. I think if they work on it, I think this is pretty close. I'm gonna give it a MVP 2-1. I think they do drop a game versus Andromeda, but I think in a best of three, I think they could be able to clutch it out. I'm I'm just not entirely sure about Andromeda, but we'll see. Well, I guess they did beat them in Frostbite, so I don't really know what I'm saying.
Right. I
But
mean, you're saying that MVP has a better strength in blind pick, and they still lose to Andromeda in blind pick. One game sample size, obviously, so you have to caveat it a
yeah,
little bit. Um,
yeah,
Normally, I'd say like side select determines series because I think these two teams are pretty similar in strength, and we've shown that Andromeda can beat them. But I think MVP's draft problems all get solved on red side for Valor specifically. But I also think that MVP does really well on blue side because that is the better lane, or that's the better side of the map for bot lane.
Yeah.
So I think MVP probably going to take out either 2-0 or 2-1. Just so that we have different
Yeah.
predictions, I'll say a 2-0. But I think
Oh.
Andromeda has a huge chance of getting a game. We are running down to about 5 seconds left. So anything you want to say real quick?
Not really. We're Shark fathers, both of these teams.
Okay,
Anyways,
bye bye.